I mean, I would stay very basic and say, make the effort. It seems like you're going to have to do all these crazy things to make yourself stand out, to do other things, but some of it is just the basics. It's the fundamentals. It's network. It's get to know people. It's be respectful, encourage building the networks, spending time with people, but thanking them for their time. It's asking for, access and help without an expectation of anything in return.
Mhm.
There are a lot of basic fundamental things that the generation today is not as adept at as earlier generations. And it's like you said, the humanness of business matters.
I'm happy to have my good friend Lisa Chang here, Global Chief People Officer of Coca-Cola with me. Thanks so much for being with us, Lisa.
Thank you for having me, Dave. It's great to see you.
Good to see you too. I think the last time I saw Lisa was in New York. Was it at the NASDAQ event?
Probably.
And
Yes.
then Gold House Gala before that. So yeah, I don't get to see you often enough, but thanks for always commenting on my socials and listening to my podcast. Apparently, Lisa has listened to a few episodes, so she knows what's in store. So Lisa, I just want to take this time to kind of get to know you and hear about your story, but also get advice from you as the Global Chief People Officer of Coca-Cola, but also many other prominent companies. I'm sure a lot of folks could get some really good advice from you as someone who works with a lot of executives and understanding what kind of the baggage we have as culturally as Asian Americans, how we struggle with different aspects of our careers, how we can kind of break through those bamboo ceilings. So it's going to be packed full of great advice from you, Lisa. So I'm excited to talk to you. So your parents immigrated from Taiwan to Virginia. Tell us about that. What your parents did growing up, where in Virginia you grew up, because it wasn't in Alexandria or Arlington in the DC area. It was in rural Virginia. So like my wife. And so I would love to hear more about that upbringing in Virginia.
Yeah, for sure. You can probably tell from a little bit of the Southern accents that I've retained. I did grow up in the South. And actually, my father first immigrated, like many, to California. And he came first. He was here for several years and then went back and brought my mom over. And at the time, older brother who had been born in Taiwan. He primarily came to the States, like many Asian immigrants, for education. So he came to get his master's degree, wanted to pursue his doctorate. So before we actually landed in Virginia, he went to a series of other towns. So he got his master's degree at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville. And then he moved to Virginia to work at a community college in a small town called Clifton Forge, Virginia, which is not too far from where your wife comes in Blacksburg. So it's just east of Roanoke. And that's where I was born. And then we moved to College Station, Texas, where my father pursued his doctorate degree at Texas A&M. And then we moved back to Virginia, where he was a college professor at a local community college in a small town called Abingdon. So my formative years from sort of kindergarten up through high school were primarily in this part of the country called the Tri-Cities, which is Bristol, Johnson City, Kingsport, a small little triangle, southwest corner of the state on the Tennessee border. And, I've reflected many times about the wonderful things that came out of growing up in a small community like that, as well as some of the challenges, certainly being Asian and not having a lot of Asians that were in the community with us at the time.
Do you feel like growing up in the South, because you're one of the few Asians, that has helped you kind of, adapt more? I think you've talked about this in other podcasts about your family trying to assimilate you as much as possible so you didn't feel as, Taiwanese growing up. But do you feel like that's helped you adapt and kind of be a chameleon in different corporate environments?
I think it's a good question. I think certainly it helped from an adaptation standpoint of just, my parents were very good about saying, look, you need to assimilate to the American ways. We came to this country for better education, better life. So try to not stand out. It was kind of the opposite of what we tell people today. And they were very encouraging of us to get involved in things at school. But then we'd walk through the, doors of the house after school, and it was very Asian. The language, we ate the food, we had all the smells, we did, kind of grandparents would come and say they didn't speak a lick of English. And so we kind of had this dual world. But my dad eventually moved from teaching into corporate and worked for
Didn't he start his own company?
Did start his own company eventually after all the kids were gone, but he worked in technology. So he worked for Sperry, Unisys, Intergraph, Digital, a lot of those tech companies. at the time. So he himself was in the workforce. And I think his mode of survival, quite frankly, because he was obviously an immigrant, was to keep your head down
Mhm.
and to do, try to blend in and all that. So that was the advice he gave us, I think, just experientially what he experienced in the workplace. And then when I started, kind of navigating my own career, I want to talk a little bit about sort of my aha moment in college.
Mhm.
That's when I started to realize that, there's a balance, right? All of one and not recognizing the other half of my heritage was
Mhm.
actually a disadvantage
Mhm.
versus just trying to blend in.
Did you have any like kind of seminal experiences growing up in Virginia or in Texas or anywhere that reminded you that you were not? I mean, I think you said you didn't realize you were Asian until you got to UVA, but that means did you not realize, did you not face anything growing up?
Occasionally, but the community that we grew up in was a very gracious, welcoming community. And I think because my father was the local college professor, he was the engineering science professor
Mm.
at the local community college. We knew people in the community, they were
Mhm.
very welcoming of us. We were not a big community.
Yeah. Yeah.
That because we were so uh,
Outnumbered.
adapt
Yeah.
to the existing community, were just very welcoming of us. And that's not to say that we didn't have some of the things that, kids experience in terms of,
Sure.
the gestures
Bullying and
of
stuff.
the eye,
Yeah.
making noises that would,
Yeah.
imitate, speak
Yeah.
Chinese or things like that happened. But overall, I would say it was a very, um, welcoming childhood.
Yeah.
I did a lot of kind of all American things. I mean, I had a dual personality. I did all the things that Asian kids do, right? I played the piano, I played the violin, I went to Chinese school. We drove 2 hours away to go to a Chinese school. We did all these things.
Yeah.
But then I also did things that non-Asians wouldn't typically do. I was a cheerleader, things like that, that typically, I mean, it was a whole long battle to even get
Yeah.
to be
Oh,
a cheerleader.
really?
But yeah,
Well, tell us the story.
well,
You can't just touch on that and not even
I
tell us
know
the story.
I threw that out. I opened that door. So I was, a junior, going to be a junior in high school. My best friend decided that, and I had done cheerleading when I was young, just as a
Mhm.
recreational thing, but I was in high school. And at that point, my father was very, strict on grades. You have to get into a good college. You can't do all this frivolous stuff. And so my best friend wanted to try out for cheerleading. And so she said, come try out with me. And I said, my dad will never let me do it. And she said, well, you just have to try out. I mean, the chances of us making it are slim because there are only, 2 slots. So
Mhm.
may as well just try out for fun. So fast forward to not draw this all out is I actually made the squad. And
Did your best friend make it?
no, she did. I know. No. Um, but it was dramatic and it was a life moment because my parents didn't know, and the principal actually, we lived in a small town. The principal was
Yeah.
excited and happy for me that he called my parents to tell them before I had a chance to tell them. And it was not a good conversation because my dad was like, "That's a mistake. There's no way, Lisa
Yeah.
try out for cheerleading. She didn't have permission to try." And the principal's like, "Well, she did, and she made it." So there's a long conversation about,
Yeah.
why you do this. You went against us. You did all the things. But long story short, it came down to a conversation with my dad of, a series of choices and dedication. And he said, "Well, clearly it's something you really want to do because you
Mm.
would have gone to these links.
Yeah.
You're a pretty good kid.
Yeah.
So, if this is something you want to do, here are the rules, right?
Yeah.
So, like, you can't grade slip, you can't do this. You still have to keep up with piano and violin. You have to do, all these things.
Yeah.
And the minute something, you're
That
out of it.
happened. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, that's what happened. And I ended up, I was a cheerleader my junior year, and then I was captain of the cheerleading squad my senior.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah, unusual, bipolar personality of, I was the
No.
kid practicing the piano and the violin and doing all my other,
Yeah.
and then I'd run up and do, cheerleading.
I mean, I think that's very poignant though, because I think those who continue to follow the rules and never break them, they end up not being seen, right? Because they're always just heads down. So you were the heads down for a long time until you're like you weren't, and then I mean that's probably why you've been able to break through a lot of places, because if you just stay unseen, you'll never get recognized for it.
And I think it's as you said, the safe choices versus being courageous and recognizing that, there are risks, but what are the
Yeah.
rewards?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's what you wanted to do. And it's like, rather than do everything your parents wanted to do, you actually did what you wanted to do. I mean, it's tough being the obedient, child, but then also wanting to be yourself too. So All right, so back to Charlottesville. So back to UVA.
Yes,
You go to study communications. You were pre-med, but that did not stick. And your mom was a nurse, is that right?
she was a nurse.
Or studied a nurse?
She studied nursing in her early days, and she was a nurse before she and my dad got married. But yeah, so actually the life plan, which because most of us of the children of immigrants have plans that the parents have already scripted out before we're
Yes.
born. So my life plan was to be a doctor. And so I knew no different. That was really my childhood was spent planning to go to medical school. And so when I went to UVA, I declared a biology major. I went in thinking, yeah, this is what I'm going to do, be a pediatrician or a doctor of some sort. Went in the first 2 years, it was just awful. Like, I didn't like the classes. I
Or
didn't
go was not,
understand
yeah.
it. I didn't engage with it. It was really stressful. As you know, you have to prepare for medical school the minute you start there. So I was volunteering
Yep.
at the local hospital. It
Yep.
was all kinds of extracurricular things to pad my resume for medical school. And finally, one day, I just realized when I was volunteering at the hospital that I did not like the hospital environment and that it was going to be a very depressing, long life.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
had to be a doctor.
Yeah.
So I went back to my parents. I called them and I just said, listen, it's not for me. I don't like hospitals. I don't like the sight of blood. I don't like sick people. I don't like, I don't understand organic chemistry. Like, this is not working for me.
Mm-hmm.
To which my dad responded, okay, well, then what are you planning to do with your life? Right. I'm 19 years old. And I said, well, I'd like to change my major to something in the liberal arts college because UVA had a really great liberal arts college. And I said, I'd like to major in English and go into business.
Oh my gosh. The death knell.
So
You
my
said all
dad's
the wrong things right
response
there.
was very typical. He said, I'm not paying for you to go to college to study English because you already speak English. So you're going to have to find something else to major in. So anyway, I landed on communications. I wasn't exactly sure. I knew I wanted to get into business, but I didn't know how.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, it was the big Connie Chung era. So I
Mm-hmm.
thought, okay, maybe I could be a news broadcaster, a journalist, or
Mm-hmm.
something. So that's sort of the journey that I ended up taking,
Yeah.
but landing into HR. But yeah, those
Wow.
were good conversations either.
Yeah, that's amazing. I met Connie earlier this year, and I was like, the influence she had on so many people going that route because they saw her. Like, literally, there's one person, or I decided I want to start a company because I work for Jerry Yang, and he started a company.
Yeah,
So it's like, or how many kids
role
see Jeremy
model.
Lin, and they're like, oh, I want to be an NBA player. But it's amazing the impact she had. But yes, that same conversation. I mean, I remember thinking, like, my wife majored in English at Penn, and I was like, your parents were okay with that? Like, it's expensive. My parents said, if you are, even if I was pre-med, they would have said, we're paying for only state school because it only matters where you go to graduate school for medical school. And if I don't get a business degree or something else, they're not going to pay for it. I was like,
Right,
wow, there was
right.
so lots of threats there. But okay, so you did comms
Yeah.
to get into business.
To get into business. I go to school, small town girl, assimilated all of my life to try to be American, go to the college, met my roommate who was from Northern Virginia. We go to sort of the club festival at the beginning of the school year where all the clubs kind of try to get people to
Yeah.
join, right? So we go to the fair, we're
Mm-hmm.
walking around, people are handing us flyers, inviting us to different mixers and events, and we're having a good time. And she was a Caucasian from Northern Virginia, and walking around, and we pass this group of students, and they beeline it towards me, and they're handing me flyers to come to their event. And I was like, oh, this is great. This looks really great. They were very friendly. They were chatting me up, and everything. And
The
they
Christian
said,
fellowship?
perfect.
Like, what is
They said,
this?
I just thought, okay, fine. So I just took the flyer and I kept going. We finished our rounds that evening. We sat down and we looked at all the invitations that we had and said, I'd like to go to this. I'm going to try this. How about that? So I pick up the flyer that was given to me by this group of students that had approached me, and it was the Asian Student Association. Didn't really dawn on me at the time. They were nice and friendly, and I was like, oh, look, they're so friendly.
Yeah.
And so I said to my roommate, hey, these people were really nice. Why don't we go to this? And she said, I don't think that invitation.
For me.
And I said, what are you talking about? They were so friendly. They were so nice. And she's like, Lisa, it's for Asian students. And I said, well, why would they give it to me then?
Oh, wow.
You're Asian. And I said, well, I'm American. I'm not really Asian. So anyway, it was that whole thing of me like saying, there's something different about me.
Mm.
I, from the outside, felt very normal like everybody
Mm-hmm.
else. American. I didn't think anybody saw me any differently. It didn't dawn on me that the black hair and the different
Hmm.
eyes and everything because I sounded like every other person.
Hmm.
But that was the moment when I started to realize, okay, there is something different about me. And if I roll it back into the way I lived my life, which was an inside the house, outside the house, I
Yeah.
realized that I had suppressed so many of the things that were inside the house when I was outside that
Yeah.
sudden they were being Asian in public.
Yeah.
And so that really started my whole journey of, hey, I want to get to know other
Hmm.
people
Hmm.
and have the same, life experiences. And some of my best friends, even today, were people that I met through that Asian student organization. And it was, as you said, you just all of a sudden have similarities.
Yeah.
You can talk about the food, you can talk about the grandparents, you can talk
The
about the way
trauma,
sorry,
all the trauma you had.
therapy together. You could do all these things
Yeah.
together. And my realization over time that, hey, if I had known these things growing up, would I have
Yeah.
differently and would I have not been so quick to suppress these parts of my life and share it with others? I became very active in the Asian student organization. And then, as I mentioned, went on to have my senior thesis be about the underrepresentation of Asians in media to really kind of
Oh,
debunk
wow.
stereotypes around
Cool.
some of the things that we talked about.
That's awesome.
So yeah, so that was really the aha moment for me, which is
Yeah.
there is something different about me,
Yeah.
but it's good, right? The life
Yeah.
experience I had can be helpful for others.
Yeah. And did you meet your husband at that organization?
I did not. I
Okay.
did not. He went to Georgia Tech. I
Oh,
went,
okay.
so we were far away, but we'll have to do a whole nother podcast on that.
Yeah. No, that's
I
separate.
met him in Taiwan.
Love
Um,
boat. Oh, we found a Love Boat winner. I don't always find that many people that meet and get married to the people
I
they.
know, we know.
Wow, romance in Love Boat actually works. So those who are advertising, there is no more Love Boat days, so you missed out. But okay, that's a whole nother episode we'll do. So you ended up going. Did you go to Atlanta right away for your first job, or where was your first?
So after graduation from college, I actually moved to Alabama to live with my parents, and I started a graduate school program. I
Okay.
graduated in, early, 1991, and the job market wasn't great, especially
Hmm.
liberal arts major. I told you so conversations. So I decided to go home, live at home, and go start my MBA. And while I was there, I realized that getting an MBA is very hard if you don't have any work experience because
Hmm.
it doesn't mean as much.
Hmm.
So that's when I decided about 6 months into my MBA that, you know what, I'll come back to this, but I'd like to go work for a while.
Hmm.
But then I moved to Atlanta 6 months after graduation. I moved to Atlanta, and one of my friends from college was living and working in Atlanta. So we started living together, and I got my first job at a little startup company. And that sort of began the career journey of navigating what things I could do with a comms degree in business.
So did you start? Was your first job in HR, or was it like not until
It was
later?
not. I had an internship in HR
Oh,
while
okay.
in college, but my first job was actually for a small startup company that manufactured laser toner printer
Oh,
cartridges.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Very fancy. But we were in the recharging business,
yep,
and laser printers were just making their way. We were, the alternative.
yeah.
And I really just went in as an office person. I was
Hmm.
office management, answering the phones, doing those types of things. Eventually moved into helping with marketing. And then because of my experience having been an HR intern, it was a small company that was growing and we
Yeah.
grew
So they let you do things. Yeah.
I was doing, I was hand calculating the payroll taxes and
Hmm.
writing checks and doing things like that. And so I went to the
Hand
president.
calculating.
Oh yeah, yeah.
No Excel. Wow.
No, that was a long time ago. So I went to the owner of the company and I said, listen, I have this experience that in HR, and I think, we're getting big enough now that we should put in some HR
Mm.
policies and practices and really start a function. So he said, that sounds great. So I started my own little HR thing and did policies and procedures, wrote a handbook,
Compensation, benefits, everything.
tree accounting. So I didn't have
Yeah.
the handwritten paychecks anymore.
Yeah.
Did some training, did all of that. And then I eventually, by the time I left that company, then I joined the Federal Reserve Bank as an HR
Hmm.
analyst, comp analyst, and that started sort of my functional career.
Got it.
Yeah, that startup opportunity just gave me a chance to, create and
Yeah.
roll.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Um, again, very entrepreneurial. Like sounds like, and so you stay in Atlanta and you start working for all the biggest employers of the city, running HR for Weather Channel, Turner Broadcasting, Equifax, the Arthur Blank family, which owns the Falcons and United FC, Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and then Coca-Cola since 2019. Basically worked at all these different types of companies. They're not just, it's not just one industry. They're all different industries. And, you've held roles at all those places. And like, what is it that you love about like HR, and what's the common misperception people have about the role of HR?
Well, I think it's evolved over time. I think one of the reasons I landed in HR was the internship that I had and the
Hmm.
recognition that um, business is a lot about people.
Hmm.
And although my father was an engineer and, I saw all the things that the other functions did, I was especially drawn to this notion of taking care of people and
Hmm.
understanding how to motivate people and how you can make a difference. And when I started in HR, it was called personnel,
Hmm.
and we did the recruiting, we did the onboarding, we did those types of things. But again, I had some great mentors and people that took me under the wings is they genuinely cared about the people in the company and it made a difference. Like
Hmm.
when companies pay attention to their people and create great cultures and great environments, people perform better.
Hmm.
So I like that, and I like helping people. I'm a middle child,
Hmm.
only daughter, so, I mean, I think there are some natural tendencies of caretaking that I
Hmm.
enjoy. Um, and I think just being able to impact that has been really, really helpful. I think over the years, HR, from a personnel standpoint to where we are today, has, some of the negative along the way have been things like the policy police or,
Hmm.
the ones that kind of come in and make sure that people aren't doing the things that they're not supposed to be doing, or a lot of, administrative, they're just the paper pushers, those types.
Hmm.
There are a lot of those negative connotations that I think played into my desire to shift the perception of
Hmm.
value of HR could bring. And along the way in my career, when I was at the Weather Channel, I was there about 11 years. Most of it was HR, but I had an opportunity. I was there when we started the website weather.com. That's how
Hmm.
long it
Oh,
was.
wow.
And when we started that business, there was an opportunity for me to leave HR and to be a product manager.
Mm.
One of our, at the time, application products. So this was the
Mm.
early days of apps. It was
Yeah.
you download and they sit in your system tray.
Yeah.
And so the CEO approached me and said, "Listen, this will be a great opportunity. You keep saying you want to get closer to the business, you want to learn more. Would you be interested in running this product?" And it's sort of one of those things, be careful what you ask for. I was like,
Hmm.
how do I say no to that since I've been asking, like, what else can I do to learn more about the business?
Yeah.
But I'm petrified
Yeah.
because I don't know anything about it. I don't know anything about product management. I don't know anything about technology. I don't know anything about sales. And she was the one that said to me, "Listen, this is a leadership role. I'm not asking you to develop it. I'm not asking you to sell it. I'm not asking you to,
Yeah.
do anything that way. I'm asking you to set a strategy, to hire the people, to help problem solve, to get
Hmm.
it off the ground." So I did, and I left HR and I went to be the product manager
Oh,
at the
wow.
for a little while. And it was during that period that I really developed what I would say is my HR philosophy
Mm.
on the importance and the value that HR can add to a business and the way it has to be approached. Because
Hmm.
when I was in that seat, like all business leaders, you're worried about a lot of things. You're worried about sales targets, about expenses, about meeting with your customers and doing all these other things. And the last thing that's on your mind is administrative process.
Hmm. Hmm.
And because HR was seen as such the administrative driver, like, I realized that even once I was on the other side, found great frustration in the laborious processes that we were asked to do,
Hmm.
manage our employees.
Hmm.
Really long annual performance reviews, documentation of all these goals and the criteria, and just the burden of a lot of that. And
Hmm.
so I kind of said to myself, look, if I ever have a chance to go back to HR, I'm going to want to make sure that the impact I have facilitates and enables the business to achieve the business objectives, not
Yeah.
bog them down.
Yeah.
So that's what happened, shortly. So I was in the job, a little over a year. And the CEO came to me because the head of HR had left and said, "I'd like for you to come back to HR
Mm.
and function." And I really did have to think about it.
Hmm.
Because once I had escaped and
Yeah.
went to the other side, and people were
Yeah.
taking me to lunch because nobody wants to have lunch with a and it's true.
Yeah.
You don't want to be seen having, lunch with a there's always questions about that.
That's true.
So
Your
I
last day.
decided, you know what? But I have a chance to make a difference, and I have
Hmm.
to employ some of the things that I learned, which is
Mhm.
how can HR be an enabler to strategy and business results as opposed
Mhm.
to be an obstacle. And so
Yeah.
that's really when I said, all right, go back into HR. I'm only going to take jobs in HR that allow me to make and progress this forward. I don't want to
Yeah.
be on the side that really drags down businesses. I want to
Yeah.
be on the that accelerates businesses. So from
Yeah.
there, every job I had after that from an HR perspective was very focused on really being closely aligned to the business,
Mhm.
driving the strategies of the companies, helping with growth, M&A,
Mhm.
those types of building businesses. When I worked for A&B Group, we launched the soccer team, we built the stadium, we did a lot of sort of new things that allowed us
Yeah.
to set the standard on how we wanted people to be treated.
Well, so that kind of that leads into my next question about how you broke through the bamboo ceiling to get to the C-suite, because it sounds like you became a systems thinker and you're much broader about how, it was that product management job that led you to understand the value you could create. And then people saw that, that drive, that willingness to, like, at the end of the day, the CEO's job is to drive, the bottom line. And if he
Mhm,
has people with him that support him that do that. And how did you navigate, the being a woman of color in, large companies, which are probably mostly led by, white men? Like,
mhm.
how did you break through that bamboo ceiling? Is there advice that you have for others on how you did it based on your experience?
I think one is just this curiosity. I was always a curious child. And my dad would often say, you ask too many questions. But I think that that actually played well into my ability to be the system thinker because I was always curious why. Like, how does this matter? What does this make sense for? And when I was a compensation analyst, we would have to evaluate jobs. I was working for a paperboard packaging company at the time, and I was evaluating jobs on a production line in a paper mill. And, on paper, it didn't mean anything to me. I was like, what does this mean? How's it? So I
Mhm.
asked my boss, I said, can I go to the paper mill? And she was like, why would you want to do that? I said, well, I see what the words say on the paper, but I'd really like to understand what it
Mhm.
means so that I can really fully get a sense of what the job is. And she's
Mhm.
like, well, yeah, nobody does that, but if you want to, go ahead. I mean, it completely changed my perspective on what was involved in this job. And it brought to life the things on the paper, right? So I think
Yeah.
that natural curiosity is really, really helpful,
Mhm.
especially in this day and age when technology is advancing so rapidly and staying ahead of it is more and more important. I mean, you look at your kids are, learning things that we would have never thought
Yeah.
possible,
Yeah.
right? And so that's going to continue. So we all have to continue to have that curious mindset. So I
Mhm.
think advice is just always be a learner, always ask questions, be sure that you're making yourself relevant for the future because it's coming very, very fast, much
Mhm.
faster than it was in my generation.
Yeah.
That's I think the other piece of advice I would give is don't be afraid to ask for help.
Mhm.
I think that's another characteristic that Asians tend to have, which is perfection. A lot of us grew up in a perfectionistic environment where our parents expected perfection from us. I think I heard this on one of your other podcasts. You bring the 98 home, and the question is, where are the other 2 points? Instead
Mhm.
of, well, that's great. I tell that story to my kids all the time, and they're like, that's awful. Why would grandpa say that? And I'm like, well, that's how it was. I mean, we
Yeah.
never got like kudos for getting a
Yeah.
98. It was always like, well,
Why
why
didn't
didn't
I do?
points? And so I think at some point, though, you recognize that, especially as you grow into jobs and careers, it's never expected that any one person has all the answers.
Mhm.
It's always expected that you come to the answers by working with others, through others, and collaborating with others. So asking for help is one of
Mhm.
those. And being able to say, hey, listen, I'm not really sure about this. Can I get your thoughts? Or
Mhm.
what's your point of view on this? Or,
Mhm.
do you have experience with anything like this that could be helpful? Those are not signs of weakness. Those are
Mhm.
actually signs of great collaboration and great partnership and great teamwork, right? Because
Mhm.
you don't want somebody who is a know-it-all, right?
Yeah.
I think that asking for help is another thing. And, I raised my kids that way because again, as a kid, I used to be scared to ask my dad
Yeah.
about something.
Yeah.
I didn't know it because he would be like, well, then study harder, read the chapter,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I'm always encouraging my kids. It's okay to learn. It's okay to make mistakes. I mean, I think
Yeah.
those really important things. And then I think the final thing on the mistakes ones is look, we're all going to make mistakes. We're humans. And, there's different types of mistakes. I think you probably know about Amy Edison's book, The Right Kind of Wrong. Basically, there are mistakes that make you better because you learned something you didn't know if you hadn't tried it.
Mhm.
Those are the mistakes that you want to leverage and make sure that you're taking advantage of. The mistakes that we always get confused about are when you do something that you know you shouldn't have done,
Mhm.
or you keep making the same mistake over
Mhm.
and over again, you're not learning.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that's how we saw all mistakes, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
As opposed to the right way to look at it is, did I learn something I wouldn't
Yeah.
have learned had I not.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it's I just realized I'm like one of the underappreciated kind of side effects of asking for help is you actually build a relationship with people because you're vulnerable and you
Yeah,
build trust and you share, like you need they feel appreciated because you're like, oh, you came to me because you needed help. That means you think I must know something or I'm able to do something.
yeah.
And then that vulnerability is how you kind of plant seeds for longer term relationships and sponsors and mentors and other things. I mean, did you have many sponsors and mentors along the way?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. The older I get, the more appreciative I
Yeah.
am of the investment of time that they put in me over the years.
Mhm.
I just called one, the other day. He's, now 82 years old, and he was, head of HR for a company that I worked for, and he took, quite of an investment in me at the time, and I just called to check in, and I also like to check in on, the "what would you do if" scenario, because
Mm.
problems of today seem very daunting.
Mhm.
But what you really understand when you're able to connect with people who've been at it much longer than you is that, the details might change, but the
Yeah.
challenges and the
The
decisions that have to
same.
be made are essentially the same, right?
Yeah.
The process
Yeah.
that they go through thinking about what decision to make are equally challenging.
Yeah.
So I try to keep up with as many of them as I can because I think
Yeah.
that knowledge is so helpful. But absolutely finding people that are not only mentors and sponsors, but people that can be truth tellers,
Mhm.
talk a lot about the radical candor and having a
Mhm.
psychological safe place where you can say to somebody, how did I come across?
Mhm.
Or
Mhm.
what advice would you have for me? I mean, some of the best advice I've gotten have been from those people that are willing to be truth tellers.
Mhm.
Listen, you didn't say a word in that meeting.
Yeah.
So the value of you being there was completely lost.
Yeah.
You
Yeah. You need that.
know, you're kind of like, okay.
Yeah.
Or, I had another boss slash mentor say to me once, you're trying to do too many things. You're spreading
Mm.
yourself too thin. And as a result, you're not doing anything extraordinarily well. You're
Mhm.
a lot of things okay. So
Mhm.
choice to make, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We do a lot of things, or do you want to be really good at a couple things that make you stand out?
Yep.
You can't have those conversations with people that aren't invested in you
Yep.
and won't give you the psychological safety, and you also have to be willing to accept it. I mean, being defensive when you get that kind of feedback is the worst thing to do.
Right.
Reflect it's hard. It
Yeah.
hurts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wrong, but
But
very valuable.
yeah, I mean, you need the self-awareness and accountability from other people too. So I was gonna, I mean, I was gonna ask how kind of what advice you have for Asians that hold us back in rising up the corporate ladder, but I think you gave a number of them there. How about on like a resume? What qualities for you stand out when you look at a resume? Asians tend to get so hung up on brand names and like what schools you went to, what big name companies you worked at, but is that what really matters anymore? Like, what do you look for if someone's applying for like a VP role from outside of Coca-Cola? Or even a C-suite role, like I mean, you probably have other firms that you work with that tell you everything, but what is it that you look for that stands out? Because I feel like I look at a lot of Asian resumes and they great, lots of big company names. They were all like analysts at this and whatever at that. But I almost like looking at the extracurriculars they do or interests they have outside that make them stand out because that shows that they
Well,
do other things, right? Yeah.
yeah, I mean, this is my preference and orientation is to look at the achievement of results. So I like
Hmm.
resumes that don't talk about your job duties and responsibilities and talk about impact.
Hmm.
The ones that really show what you personally were involved in, how you drove it, how you
Hmm.
participated in a team, what was the value that was created by your role on the team. I think those are incredibly important. And then I think, just the obvious, which is if it's a lot of me, I's, that's a little bit of a red flag because
Hmm.
we don't work individually
Hmm.
in the world today. We work very closely with others. So there needs
Hmm.
some indication and reference that the work is accomplished, through and with others.
Hmm.
And so I think that's incredibly important. But again, the results I think are important. I think to your point about looking at extracurriculars, I think that shows well-roundedness and balance.
Hmm.
I think those are important. I wouldn't say certifications, but indications that you're continuing to learn. What are the things that you're doing to get better? And are you participating in events, associations? Are you, helping to set up programming for your organization? Are you getting a
Yeah.
certification in AI? Are
Hmm.
you, participating in the latest and greatest? And what are
Yeah.
some things that can kind of help you continue to grow are
Yeah.
incredibly important.
I mean, I think a lot of those are indications of being proactive. Like if you're going to be proactive in your own life, you'll be proactive at work. If you don't, you'll just be told what to do. And, you need people who are kind of self-starters or, willing to do the work, roll their sleeves up themselves.
Now, the other
It's,
thing I would just say, which I think is incredibly important because it's also something that Asians historically have not been great at, is the networking.
hmm.
I know you and I talk about this a lot. You're like class A network, the model of what a networker should be like.
And that's not a bad word. She's not using it as an insult. Okay.
It's a compliment. But, with today's technology, lots and lots of companies use technology to screen out resumes.
Mm,
And so, if you don't get the call because you've submitted 100 resumes, I mean, don't be surprised
mm,
because everybody's doing the same thing. So
uh-huh,
it's easy to apply for one job today as it is to apply to 50 jobs.
uh-huh.
And that doesn't necessarily make you stand out. But the calls you make, the networking, the following up on a conversation that you had with someone in passing that shows
Hmm.
a deeper interest,
Hmm.
asking someone for time to meet you for, a cup of coffee or a lunch to just brainstorm about ideas with no specific asks. I mean, don't ask somebody at lunch to ask for a job.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's networking.
Yeah.
That's really important skills these days, which is
Yeah.
you have to make yourself stand out. And a little effort goes a long way because you would be surprised at how many people don't put in the effort. So it doesn't
Yeah.
take a lot.
Even like personalizing a message or something like that. Yeah.
Some basic things. We've had a lot of interns come through here. We had about 140 interns this summer.
Hmm.
I spent time with them at a kind of all intern session. The handful of ones that wrote me personal notes afterwards, just
You'll remember. Yeah.
coming
Yeah.
matters.
Yeah.
So
I think
it's
that's in this.
extra effort.
No, totally. And in this age of AI where agentic AI can just write all this stuff and reach out and do all these emails, and you're like, okay, well, you know, you start feeling like everyone can do it. So the extra effort to be more human will actually stand out if you hand write a note and deliver it, or send a small gift or whatever it might be. But that the AI, well, at some point maybe agentic AI could do that too, but not yet. But it's that extra effort that shows the human aspect of things, because
Yeah.
the bar is getting higher and higher to actually show that you
My
made.
kids, I made them all write thank you notes all the way through their childhood. And even
Mm,
now, as they were graduating from college, it's a handwritten thank you note, which
yeah,
one of my sons is very frustrated about. He's like, it'd be so much easier if I could just send an email. And I said, well, that's not the point. The point is,
yeah,
you took time and energy to send you a gift. You can take 5 minutes to sit down
yeah.
and write them a personal note.
Yep. I will say that's probably more a Southern etiquette thing, because my wife is the one who makes me do that, like for our wedding and other things. And I'm just like, makes our kids write thank you notes. I'm like, she's like, yeah, it is very much it's this Southern etiquette thing, because I didn't grow up doing that. And so I had to learn myself. But yes, I think it just goes to show that you actually care and people remember those things, those gestures. What is it about? Do you feel like I always tell people, like, getting a referral to a job is way more effective than blind, submitting your resume through the website, because like most people don't see that. If you have any access to a person who actually works at a company, and this is why networking is so important,
Yeah.
you'll have a better shot at being seen.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. But I think the thing is you have to invest in the network ahead of time.
Yes,
And
not
I
just
tell
when you need these.
all the time too is people that reach out and ask for help and you
Yeah,
don't have any other
like
interaction with them
it's
otherwise,
like, yeah, they
you know,
can see right through that. Yeah,
hard thing to do. I mean, I try to help as many people as I can, but I'm more inclined to help the people that have
you
invested
actually,
in getting
yeah.
to me or vice versa. And then certainly, if you ask me for help and I offer it and you don't follow up with me, that's not good either.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess one of the questions I want to ask about is strategies about getting promoted, because I talk to a lot of folks who are, I mean, they get messages from so many people who feel like I've been stuck in this role forever and I haven't been promoted. At some point, I talked to partners, some of my friends at Goldman, and they're like, if the person's been a director for like 5, 10 years, they're probably never going to get promoted to VP, because it's just, they didn't, you have to be planning ahead to even get Like you should know if you're going to be a VP at some point. And I think a lot of people they wait too long, and they're even it's almost like a we've we've given you every clue that you're not going to be promoted here. So do you think at that point it's time to it is a sign that you probably should, quit and go somewhere else to try again? Because it can be daunting for a lot of Asian Americans who feel like they're stuck in a position
Yeah, I
to
think
move
it
out.
depends on what your career ambition is, and I think
Yeah.
things changed where, back in the day, promotions were very hierarchical. You're moving from a level 1 to a level 2 to a super
Hmm.
a manager, whatever. I mean, I think the world is very different today, and
Hmm.
here at Coca-Cola, we talk a lot about our program's called Thrive Careers, which is basically you can grow horizontally, you can grow vertically, you can grow
Mm.
open scale, there are lots of different ways to grow. So the definition of promotion is not the traditional definition, which is
Yeah.
fairly hierarchical
Up the ladder. Yeah.
steps.
Yeah.
So my advice would always be to think through like, what is the promotion that you're seeking for? More money? Is it more challenging work? Is it
Hmm.
something you've never done before? Is it exposure from regional to a global, to, from technical to, non-technical, and then chart your kind of career ambition path that way, as opposed
Hmm.
to, again, the traditional sense of promotions. Let's be frank, promotions in that sense are far
Yeah.
fewer than they were before. Many
Yeah.
organizations, ours included, are much flatter. So the
Yeah.
levels of promotion that people were used to in the past just don't exist.
Right.
You have to find other ways to grow and other ways to expand your skills and experiences. And I think what we talk a lot about when we say it's choose your own adventure is in some cases, you could be building a new skill that you wouldn't have otherwise been able to gain. So we have
Hmm.
like short term assignments, we have project teams, we have things where you can actually go, not leave your job physically, but go and take an assignment somewhere
Hmm.
where you're
Hmm.
build the skill, then come back.
Yeah.
There's a different way to sort of chart your growth path that can fulfill whatever you're looking for, whether it's again career growth and compensation, or knowledge growth, or
Hmm.
exposure to broader teams of people.
Yeah.
Things that I would advise people to look at.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny because I think those that doing so shows initiative that you want to learn and you're open and you're flexible to whatever comes your way, but you think you'll gain something from it. I do feel like growing up in an Asian household, you keep thinking about promotions because that's what you like. It's like medical school to residency to fellowship to like then becoming a surgeon, then you become resident. Like there's like a direct linear path of success, and that's how it's always been like and that's how I guess you think your parents will see it. Like my parents want me to be a C-suite or a VP, and then they'll be proud of me. But it's always like, how do I keep climbing the ladder? Because all our lives have been climbing ladder.
Yeah.
And then what I realize is that once you get to the next rung, it's not any better. Like there's
And
another
it's
rung
never
to go.
the end,
It's
right?
never the
It's
end. It's never the
just
end.
next, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's hard for people to think of in this new world where you're talking about is flatter and you can have experiences in you can move laterally, you can try different things out. But that's also how you, again, build relationships, you get seen, you get recognized, acknowledged, and people talk about you. More people talk about you as you move around the organization and they realize that person should be considered for this role because they've seen different parts of the company and they know more about how things work. They went to the paper mill, they did that, they did this. Because if you just keep doing the same job you've always been doing, I mean, I don't know why anyone would want to give you another job because you're really good IC or whatever at that one job,
Right.
and they wouldn't want to lose you for that. So you make yourself indispensable for that one role. And so I think people need change, but for I feel like a lot of Asians who are used to staying on one track versus there are multiple paths to get there, it's really hard kind of, mentally to get around that. I hopefully, we can, they can get out of that.
I mean, I think too, as with generations, right? So my parents immigrated. I've now raised my children of a different ilk. They will likely raise their children with a different. So hopefully, again, it gets broader and we can expand more. I mean, I know we've had a few chats about,
Hmm.
the race of our kids. And I mean, you're encouraging your kids to be whatever they want to be.
Hmm.
And that was not how it was with us. I think continuing to lean into that and seeing what's possible. And I
Yeah.
talk to our employees about the fact that the jobs of tomorrow don't even exist today. So
Yeah.
it's not again like a time when we knew that you only had, four choices: doctor, lawyer, engineer, or, a scientist or whatever. I mean,
Yeah.
not like the the joke is if you're not one of those four, then your job title's failure because like
Yeah.
what are you?
Yeah.
Not that case today. There's so many opportunities of things that
Yeah.
didn't before that give people opportunities to have vibrant, viable careers and
Yeah.
meaningful careers. I mean, my
Yeah.
dad, 88, I have a niece that goes to Purdue and, she's majoring in computer engineering. He's saying, wow, awesome. She could get into AI. And, I didn't even know he knew what AI was at 88. But, he understands that the world is changing.
Yeah.
You know, 10 years ago when she was in, middle school, we would have never said you could be an AI engineer.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of the jobs like doctor, lawyer, and other things are going to be replaced by AI too. So it's kind of no one knows what's going to happen in the future. So, I want to touch on your role, your board positions.
Yeah,
You sit on the board, public company board of Frontier Communications, as well as the board of Coca-Cola Scholars Foundation. And I often preach to people how important it is to be on boards. Can you tell our listeners how you ended up on these boards and
yeah.
why you serve on them and how you benefited from being involved in both for-profit and nonprofit board service?
So Coca-Cola Scholars Foundation, I just rolled off of that and I instead joined the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra board. But that
Awesome.
those boards are ones that came through the company. So the company has
Oh,
obviously support and sponsorship of the Coca-Cola
that's
Scholars
great.
Foundation is a scholarship program that is joint with our bottlers and company where we identify high
Cool.
achieving students for those. And that was a great opportunity. The Atlanta Symphony is also something supported by Coca-Cola. They asked me to serve on the
Hmm.
board of Coca-Cola, and I've just loved it. That's where I'm putting my piano, violin knowledge into
Hmm.
play. So oftentimes companies will ask their senior people to participate on boards for company purposes because we
Hmm.
do company sponsorship for that. In the case of the public board that I'm on, I was actually reached out to by a recruiter.
Hmm.
And it started with me just having a conversation with some of my recruiting network saying, hey, I've been at the company a few years now.
Hmm.
I would like to explore the possibility of joining a corporate board at some point because, I think there's a long tail for those of us in
Yep.
executive seats that once we exit the seats that we're in, we can do more board work.
Hmm.
So it started with just putting that out in the universe and saying to
Hmm.
people, hear of anything, I'd be interested in, exploring it. And that one thing led to another. I had a couple conversations about a couple different boards, ultimately was selected to join the Frontier board about 4.5 years ago.
Hmm.
And here's a telco fiber company going through significant transformation. When I
Hmm.
joined the board, it was emerging from bankruptcy.
Hmm.
And now, 4.5 years later, we're under a sale agreement to be purchased by Verizon.
Oh, wow.
Significant different
I
types of
don't know. Yeah. That's cool to see, though. That must be amazing to see.
but it's been different types of skills that I've learned being on that board that have they complemented the skills that I'm using to be an executive of the Coca-Cola company.
Hmm.
I'm learning things from being a board member that are helping me be a better executive at the company. So too, at some point in your career when you're able to and have the support of your organization, I do highly recommend it.
Hmm.
Do a lot of work with companies that are looking for board members, and it doesn't have to be a, high profile public company board. Like you said, it's a nonprofit
Hmm.
board. I did a couple startup boards earlier and before I joined this public board, and those were great experiences too. And,
Yeah.
lots of startup companies can benefit from experiences that sitting leaders have
Yep.
as their business.
Yeah. I mean, I always encourage people to join and participate in boards just because again, it's a network that you build from those, like I'm sure the Atlanta Symphony board and, the places like that, you meet a lot of incredible people that you otherwise not meet and get to know. And those relationships are super valuable when who knows when you might need them, but I think they're just important to have. And I feel like a lot of us didn't grow up. I mean, my parents they weren't considering boards or anything like that, but it's kind of like, it's not something that we grow up understanding or hearing because our parents weren't like, if I was a trust fund kid and had my dad was sat on three boards, I'd understand what the value of that was, but that wasn't something I was exposed to. And so, but I think understanding that the power of those networks and how much influence they have and access they have, is huge. But I think most people don't even know or are aware of how much
There is
influence
an
they have.
underrepresentation of Asians on boards, as
100%. Yeah.
all Asians and certainly Asian women.
Hmm.
And so, I'm doing a little bit of work on the side too to try to create greater opportunities for that. But, it's interesting because we asked some questions of companies and executives about why they weren't sitting on boards. And one was, well, I don't know about the opportunities. Nobody's ever called me.
Hmm.
And the second was, well, I'm busy. I'm running my own business. You and I've talked a lot about founders. I mean, it's a lot
Yeah.
of work.
Yeah.
And so it's this, again, heads down. I'm going to do the work. I mean, what's the benefit of going to join another board to help somebody else on their company when I'm trying to grow my company? But I think
Yeah.
it's all helpful, whether it's
Yeah.
the networks, whether
You
it's
learn.
what, yeah, it's all helpful. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, so one kind of final nugget or piece of advice you would give to recent Asian American grads just starting on their careers, especially in this age of AI, like your kids, as they graduate from Clemson in a couple of years, what advice would you give to kind of the young folks listening about their careers?
I mean, I would stay very basic and say, make the effort. It seems like you're going to have to do all these crazy things to make yourself stand out, to do other things, but some of it is just the basics. It's the fundamentals. It's network. It's get to know people. It's be respectful, encourage building the networks, spending time with people, but thanking them for their time. It's asking for, access and help without an expectation of anything in return.
Hmm.
There are a lot of basic fundamental things that the generation today is not as adept at as earlier
Hmm.
generations. And it's like you said, the humanness of business matters. And I think
Hmm.
it matters more today than it did in the past because there is so much technology. And I talk a lot about this here at our company that, technology, there's three different types of work. There's the head work, the heart work, and the hands work. And technology is really good at automating the hands work, the things that can be wrote and repeated and those types of things. What it's not good at is the head work, which is the critical and analytical thinking, and the heart work, which is empathy,
Hmm.
building relationships with people, listening, being kind
Hmm.
that technology can't replace. So leaning on those areas and making sure that you're over developing those skill sets,
Hmm.
I think will help you navigate an environment where so much technology is coming into the workforce because we see that the leadership characteristics and behaviors that are more necessary today than ever are those softer skills.
Awesome. Well, I mean, I don't want to give out homework, but for everyone listening, do you have any books that people should definitely read? Do you have any favorite books that?
I have a lot. I mean, I would say that The Right Kind of Wrong
Hmm.
that I mentioned before, Amy Edmondson's book about failure
Hmm.
is a really great book to just focus on that. The other one is The Radical Candor.
Hmm.
We've talked a lot about psychological safety and the environment where you can have somebody who's telling you what needs to be said, but they're doing it in a psychologically safe environment because they
Hmm.
care about you. I think those in particular will resonate with this community
Yeah.
because so much of our upbringing has been focused on trying to be perfect,
Yep.
and none of us are.
Yep.
So I'd start with those two.
Awesome. Lisa, thank you so much for taking this time. I'm like, just sharing your experience through so many different like places and people you've met and worked with. I think we can all benefit from like a lot of the advice that we spoke about today. Hopefully I'll see you at another event
Yeah,
soon, more than once a year, but if you're ever out in California, let me know. But thank you again for taking the time.
great. Thanks for having me.
All right. Okay. So let me stop there. Thanks for listening to this episode of Hyphen Nation. Please subscribe to my Substack at www.davelou.com and follow us on Instagram at the Hyphen Nation and LinkedIn at Hyphen Nation.